Scrappy peeps, Suzanna here today to share this layout that I scrap lifted of Kelly Barron. She's our guest designer this month, and this is my lift of her layout. She created that layout for Coco Daisy, and I am scrap lifting that and using my Spiegel Mom scrap sequence to incorporate into my scrap lift of our monthly guest designer. So I have this collection from Simple Stories, and it's one of the mini collections. I also supplemented it with one of the main collections, and I wanted to try and use up some of my stash, and I had no idea what sequins I was going to use, but where Kelly has those rub-ons from Pink Paisley, I knew I wanted to use sequins instead. So I wanted to rip a small edge to just define that plaid there. And initially I had torn the green with the crosses on it, but it was a little too dark. I wanted something a little softer, and so I went with this coordinating sort of mustardy yellow and just tore a fine edge, and that worked really well for me. The base of this layout is just a grid ledger paper that I picked up from Pink Paisley from Tuesday Morning. It's one of those paper packs. You can see it's 4th of July on the back, that is sort of a timeless background that you can use instead of having just white cardstock. I liked having a little bit of texture to it, and so with 20 pieces I will be able to do many backgrounds with that same look. So I had a few strips left over from previous designs that I knew I wanted to put down the side, just like Kelly had the 2 strips down the side of hers there. I believe Kelly actually stitched on her layout as well. And I toyed with doing that, but I really didn't want to go upstairs. I just needed to get this done. So I went with the gray and then that original green that I had originally ripped to put next to that main strip on the right hand side. So there's a little gray, and then I'm going to use my Prima pen, just the edge of it, to get glue down for that fine strip, which is perfect for fine detail work, the Prima glue pen, and put that fine ripped border down the edge there, just so that you don't run off the edge of the page. My mom and dad were here from Indiana visiting recently, and this is a picture of my mom and my daughter. We were sitting in the park having lunch, and I have a new iPhone, and I wanted to use the portrait setting, and so I used the portrait setting on my iPhone to just sort of test out, and I really like the result of the picture. It's someday it'll be nice to see these pictures of my parents and my children together. So at the bottom, Kelly has a die cut, or which are flowers and a big heart, along with a banner on that bottom left. And I thought that this heart would look really cool in the place of that there. But the problem is that it's really dark and it's really big. It's almost too big. So I need to find another element to work in there. And as I am wanting to do, I actually got distracted by the washi and a few extra layers. Kelly has a bunch of layers in there, and so I wanted to find some elements to put in there too. So instead of the banner that Kelly has, the pink banner, I use that sticker from Simple Stories that says "Good Stuff," which I end up using as the title for my layout. And while I have the sticker sheet out, I thought I'll look for other elements to decorate the page with. So I want a piece of that washi. I toyed with ripping it, but I knew I'd already had a few other ripped pieces, so I just left it as it is. And because I can't use that big heart, or I've chosen not to use that big heart on the left there, I tried using it up in the photo cluster, but my doily is not quite as big as Kelly's is, and it ruins the proportion of the page and the symmetry. So you'll see that I try using the heart, but actually end up abandoning that. So this floral paper has lots of really cool flowers on it, and so I fussy cut a bunch of those, and you'll see where I've sped things up is where I've been doing some fussy cutting. I end up doing a trio of 3 down here on the bottom, 1 in each different color. And I'm going to shuffle those around a little bit as I find a pleasing configuration for the page here. So you can see 2, and I toy with the 3rd one, but get distracted. And I see this yellow label, and I thought that that was a nice way of tying in the white and adding yet another layer to this little cluster over here on the left. So ultimately I end up with 2 clusters. In a way you could say I have 3 when I incorporate the butterflies at the end, but there are 2 main clusters. There's this cluster over here on the left, which is going to have the journaling and the title, and then there's the photo cluster up the top right. And I want elements from both the bottom cluster and the top cluster to coordinate and tie everything together. I wanted a little bit more gold. I had this idea. Kelly had gold in her layout by using the rub-ons, and I wanted to incorporate a little more gold into the layout. So I found some rub-ons and that little banner that I thought might mimic the banner that she has, but isn't quite the same gold. It doesn't work. But this gold rub-on from My Mind's Eye is perfect as an element down the side. And what I love about My Mind's Eye rub-ons is that you can literally just rub them on. They go on like butter. And so I just used my thumbnail, as you can see here, and literally just the pressure of my thumb rubbing was enough to get that clean transfer of the rub-on onto the page. Pulled off the paper and we're good. So I moved everything up just a tad because I knew I had wanted to put journaling underneath that. And Kelly has a butterfly above her banner, and I didn't want a butterfly, so I used the heart instead. Here you can see me fussy cutting this 3rd heart to finish off that trio for the cluster there. And then I wanted, Kelly's got a fair amount down there, and I wanted something else. I needed another splash of yellow to sort of tie things in, and I found that sticker that says "Seriously Great." So it's time to work on that top cluster up there. I was looking for elements that I could kind of build to the right of the photo like Kelly has, and I wanted to make this heart work. So I thought by outlining it, I would give it a little bit more definition and it wouldn't get so lost on the paper. And trying to get the alignment of that correct there. But I decide that I want to back it with something. I really like the dark background, but I really wanted another paper layer. And I found the sort of corresponding ledger paper on the aqua, and decided to go with that. So this is from the cut apart sheet from Simple Stories. And I'm actually going to cover up most of it, so the sentiment that was on there was obviously not applicable, but it was just enough to add a little bit more color to the edge there. But I had a hard time making that heart fit both on the doily and on the page, and it ends up looking much better without the heart. I've put the doily too far over. I didn't want the picture to begin where that edging ended. I wanted it to overlap it just a little bit, and so I had to shift the doily in order to make that work. So this sticker that I pulled out ages ago has been floating around and been very patient with me while I found a home for it. And I saw this navy polka dot heart, and I thought that would be perfect. Where Kelly's used flowers on her layout, I've just used a random assortment of different elements, ephemera that I've sort of built and layered. So that looks perfect there, and I thought maybe that would allow me to use the heart, but again, it ruins the balance of that top right cluster balanced with that bottom left cluster. I wanted the weight of the picture up the top, and I didn't want it to be too bulky down the bottom, and so it ends up being just the perfect weight and balance to have something to fill in the bottom of the page, yet not too much. So I finally commit to these flowers, and I have this see-through sticker from the Simple Stories collection and want to use that to sort of mimic as many of the flowers as Kelly has, but not with quite so much detail. I could have used twine here, or what I call a thread ball. That would have looked neat underneath the heart, but I try not to use it too much, and it didn't really serve a purpose, especially against the busyness of that plaid background there. So I had pulled out this wood veneer from Heidi Swap, and I knew I wanted to use that on there. By putting it on that bottom cluster, it made that bottom cluster too big and weighted it too much, but it was perfect up by the picture there. So I get distracted by a lot of these elements. I have a lot of Simple Stories from the days that I designed with them, and I really want to use it up. So I cut out a fourth flower to add. I use this fourth flower to tie in the flowers from the bottom to the flowers in the picture cluster up there. I wanted to have something that was the same from the bottom up the top to just unite that there. And that looks perfect right there. But I end up moving this see-through flower just so that there's a little bit of evenness in the weight of all of those elements there, and that heart doesn't get completely covered up. So this is again for Spiegel Mom Scraps, and so it was time to look for some sequins to match, and I ended up going with two collections, as I usually do. I use bits and pieces of each. I used the blues and the bluey colors, the aquas from the Fairy Garden collection, as well as the white and the yellow from the Salt of the Earth. And so where Kelly had the rub-ons from Pink Paisley, I decided that I was going to use sequins instead for just that sort of little shimmer on the layout there. Now, Kelly has two butterflies to the left of her picture. She also has one above that bottom collection, embellishments cluster at the bottom. I used the yellow heart instead, but I did decide that I needed something where she's got those two butterflies, and I didn't really need any more hearts, and I didn't really need any more flowers, so I ended up going to my Maggie Holmes goodies and pulling out two butterflies, which you'll see coming up shortly. And they actually end up being just sort of that perfect weight to the layout. So again, quick and easy application of sequins by using your Scotch quick dry. Just pick them up with your finger, put the quick dry on the paper, and then plop the sequins back down on the page. Works perfectly. I'm sorry if you hear the banging in the background. Our neighbors across the street are getting a new roof. Those of you who follow me on Instagram have probably seen a couple months back we had a huge hailstorm, and so pretty much all of the neighborhood has gotten new roofs. We got ours a couple weeks ago, and it's the neighbors behind us. It's their turn for their roof. So these are the two butterflies that I spoke of. I had to lift one of the sequences in order to get the butterfly to be in a position that was aesthetically pleasing to me, which was easy because it was covered by the little hole that the sequence left in the paper, but I repositioned them to add some symmetry to that page. So your eye is kind of drawn from the top left corner to the butterflies to the picture, and then in a V over to that bottom left there. So that is the end of that layout. Be sure to join us on the blog and see all the other scrap lifts that we've done of Kelly. Enjoy the close-ups, and if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask in the box below. I do stop back in. Thanks for joining me today. Take care.